This week on Rockstar Superhero. I've never done an interview with my guest hiding out in a restroom before, but Michael Freiburger, who prefers to be called by his surname only, was game for just such an experience. Freiburger and I spoke at length about the new album and the influences of doom and gloom in both the Alaska wilderness and the Pacific Northwest. He's an eccentric man, born into a multi-ethnic home, and he brings with him a life commentary that I'm positive you'll find provocative and impactful. The new album comes out soon, so this is your chance. Today you're listening to my chat with the very cool Freiburger of the extraordinary Seattle-based doom metal outfit Deathcave, and this is Rockstar Superhero.
Forgot to lock the door.
So for listeners, Fry's in the men's room at a local car dealership. So that's really rad, man. I love this. Very original.
Yeah, you got good acoustics here in these dealership bathrooms. Does great wonders for the audio. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love to do interviews. I could talk all day. It's just one of those things that's really fun for me to do.
Cool. Well, I love it because musicians are typical narcissists, and what's cool about you is you own the fact that you're a guy who just loves to talk about it and spread the wealth and spread the love and share a little bit about yourself. So I'm stoked you're here, man.
Totally. I mean, that's, again, it's like when I'm not playing music or owning a label, I work in a heavy metal bar. So it's just like all I do all day, every day is just talk about music, stuff that's coming out. More than music, but music is definitely the common topic that is brought up constantly, which is okay with me because my life revolves around it,
Yeah. I love the fact too that you're in sort of a pseudo death cave right now in that toilet.
Yes, that is a death cave of sorts. It's a little bit lighter than I would imagine a death cave being. But
yeah.
But it's death doesn't always have to be as gloomy as people make it out to be.
Right. Plus, your music brings a compelling darkness, right? So you gotta even it out sometimes. Get to the gray.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, look, man, I'm so stoked you're here. I love that you're a local. I love that you've done something stark and haunting and aggressive. I like that you're a cool guy on top of it because it's pretty clear you're a good guy. I don't know what it is about the metal business, but when that genre, man, there's something about it. Nobody who's paying attention is shocked by it, but like the nicest guys are in metal.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of always been that way. It's always had the opposite, where it's like a lot of the small town fans are the ones who are the usually like aggressive ones who like to like a Municipal Waste fan, for example. You know what I mean? Like, great band, love the dudes, but man, their crowd is just like a certain breed of people, you know what I mean? It's just like, so I feel like there's sometimes these weird stigmas that can be associated with it just because of a small group of people that are involved with it, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
It's like if you're going to do anything that's very public and social that involves a lot of people for a really, really long time, it's like, see who makes it further and does more things. The fucking asshole who's terrible with people, or the people who treat people the way they want to be treated, with respect and all that stuff. And I feel like that has a lot to do with it. And, of course there's going to be assholes and terrible people in the mix, but I think for the most part, like all the diehards, the lifers, the people who have done this forever and will continue to do this forever, are good people. What I mean? It's like they might not be nice to everyone or whatever, but generally the rule of thumb is you treat people with respect first, and it's like until you're shown otherwise. You know what I mean? So I feel like most of the people who are involved, especially the people I keep in my circle in my life, are definitely the ones who, are a lot more, not necessarily always positive, but who just are respectful. You know what I mean? Just like respect goes a long way.
Yeah, and you get it out on stage on top of it, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's just like we play aggressive music because we all, come from some kind of fucked up background that's caused us to like want to be able to get our angst, our, like feelings, all of that stuff out. And it's like, if you have a really healthy outlet for that, it's like, you don't really need to walk through life, being pissed off and just treating everyone like shit,
Yeah, for sure. Have you found that as you get older that your tastes get heavier and darker, or do they get lighter?
Man, it goes kind of all over the place. Like the new 40 Watt Sun album is one of my favorite albums of the last year. And that one is as soft as it gets. You know what I mean? It's like, but also, there's been some disgusting black metal and stuff that's just like also makes me really happy. I think it just kind of just depends on, I guess, what mood or what I'm feeling. You know what I mean? There's something for every mood or everything you're going through, especially with heavy music, as you're aware.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not like I listen to heavy music only. Right. I definitely do listen to heavier shit for the most part, but I also love lots of different music. I really love soulful singers. I really like the classics. I like soul music a lot. Like a lot of all music kind of comes from that background. So it's always great to just have.
Yeah. I mean, music doesn't define you in the sense of what you listen to anyway. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like you said, it's about the moment. And I find the greatest guys have the most eclectic and well-rounded at the same time tastes, Of
course, you can't keep yourself too boxed in. I mean, it's like when you do that, it comes out in your music and stuff too. I mean, it's like how many worship bands are there of name a genre, name a band, It's like you can tell people who only like a certain type of music, and then you can kind of tell the people who like X, Y, and Z, because I mean, it's like you definitely don't leave anything up to being like off limits when it comes to writing your music. You just write what you feel, and I think when you're in a band that kind of has more of that attitude going into writing, you're able to come up with a lot of cooler music, which is kind of what all the music I've done in the 25 years I've been playing music hasn't been like straight up this or that. Like when I was a little kid, I really loved punk and black metal. So I mixed like those two together in the late 90s, you know what I mean? Making like kind of like political punk with like screaming vocals, you know what I mean? It was just like you're very shunned upon for a long time, but after a while it kind of becomes your style and your way of creating music. It's like, I love black metal and I love doom.
Yeah.
Like death metal. You know what I mean? It's just like, I like parts of hardcore. Like there's like things that I want to add to everything, and when it comes to the music I'm making, usually there's like a common ground genre, but taking inspiration from everything. And usually the sound will change a little bit over time, which is another thing I love. You know what I mean? Bands change, bands grow. If you're just making a cookie cutter album over and over and over, it's just going to get boring,
Yeah.
So it's like the cool thing about this new Deathcave album we're currently writing is it's way more death metal, which is a lot of fun. Our songs are a bit shorter, like around 5-6 minute length time, which is short for us. It's really hard when writing songs to try to get a full thought out in less than like 7 or 8 minutes. You know what I mean? So
sure.
It's almost a challenge when you've done that for so long, like writing songs that way, where it's just like, it's like, holy shit. Like when I was a little kid writing like 3.5 minute songs or something, it's just like, I can't even try to like force that anymore. It's like, well, this riff is cool. What we should do? Play it like 10 different times progressively throughout the song. It's like, you can't really do that in 3.5 minutes or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, the problem with a 3-minute song to me, I mean, yeah, it's great for radio, but it doesn't allow anything but a snapshot of what you're trying to say in the song. And being, I mean, I'm a musician myself. So for me, and I'm assuming the same for you, is when you're just getting into the flow of it, that's when you want to explore it, right? And that's when your audience is sort of kind of getting what you're trying to say on top of it. So it's got to go, man.
Yeah, and again, it's I'm not going to bash people who write shorter songs. It's just always been a struggle for me as a songwriter to be able to get, you know, again, get a feeling, emotion out in that amount of time. So it has been kind of cool to like write a little bit shorter songs, a little more impactful, like tough songs. You know what I mean? It's been really fun. Especially since, you know, the last song we wrote for the EP was like 12 and a half minutes.
It's great.
And every album before that, you know, we had one on the full length and the EP before that were both over 10 minutes as well. So it's like, it's fun to kind of like cut it back a little bit to try to just do like one powerhouse album. We'll see. There might be a slow song on it. You know, again, I'm not going to just like act like I have an idea of what the hell is happening until it's done. You know what I mean? It's like, it's good to have some, you know, ideas in your head, but, you know, until you get together and start writing with your bandmates, it's like, I don't know. I think going into anything with like knowing exactly how it's going to be is kind of not my style. I was like, if I need to do that, you get let down a lot. Like, it's good to have an idea of what you want to do, but be open to the idea of it not being that way or being subject to change, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too, because I'm telling you, man, you're telling me exactly my own philosophy on music. When I think about metal or aggressive music or anything like this, it's like the only genre that there's multiple genres, right? There's subgenres and microgenres and subgenres of subgenres. And people are quite obsessed with it and with the underground and with all the thing in a way that a lot of other genres maybe don't get quite as fixated on or quite obsessive. But there's definitely been cut into like cute little packages. Like, oh, that's not atmospheric black metal. That's like obviously drums. Like, you know what I mean? It's right.
Something like that, where it's just like, whew. And Lord knows I am so super guilty of being like a mis-genre. You know?
Yeah. There's too many.
So I listen to so much stuff, and I'll be like, I'll say whatever comes to my mind, and my mind works a lot differently than most people. So I get made fun of, and I get lots of laughs sometimes when I'm talking about genres or bands or whatever. But I don't let it bother me. It's just how my dumb. I'm gonna work on how I talk to myself. That's just how my weird brain works.
Yeah, you know, you're eccentric.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I mean, it's like being a wine connoisseur. You get all these different flavors to try out. And what Deathcave does so well, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about, is I like the idea of multi-genre. I like the idea of experimenting and taking that through line, right? The sort of the basic riff you create and then playing with it. And you just said a second ago, we like to almost like pound you over the head with 10 different versions of the same riff. But that's what makes it so cool, and that's like, why we're talking. When
you come up with that cool riff, you don't want to let it go. You know?
No,
the riff when you leave practice and it just stays stuck in your head, and then you're just like, oh, I kind of want to like work on variants or like, you know, go home and like just play by yourself along with it until you kind of come up with cool things. It's just, I mean, it's just that excitement, getting pumped up over something cool, you know. And I mean, that's usually the test on whether or not the riff is going to stay or not.
Sure.
It's if it sticks in your head. Does it stay? Does it like, do you leave practice and hum it for like the rest of the day? You know what I mean? That's usually a good sign that you're onto something fun, you know?
Yeah. Are you a lifelong Washingtonian?
No, I'm actually Alaska native. I grew up in Fairbanks area of Alaska, and I was there until I was 19 years old. And then, as I'm sure most of you know, that Alaska doesn't have the most flourishing music scene. It's hard to get to and from. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I worked at a Denny's for a year, made as much money as I could, and moved to Seattle when I was 19 and started my music career over again here.
Wow, that's rad, man. I love that. Yeah, you're correct. 325 miles away from any place you can play music kind of sucks.
Yeah. And the thing is, we drive forever to go to shows. It's like I made it to Seattle in like 2003, and we drove maybe like 4,500 miles round trip to play like shows. You know what I mean? But it was like super exciting for us because it was something new, and also just to play in Canada a couple of times was really cool for a young teenager. It's like before that it was like going to play Anchorage, which is like miles away. You know what I mean? So it was like you go there, you play a show, and then you go home, or you'd go to like maybe one of the little hippie towns or fests that they have in between Anchorage and Alaska, like Talkeetna. They have a little bluegrass festival that's run by the Hells Angels. That's pretty gnarly, and it's fun. It's just like literally in Alaska, every single band plays with each other, and that's just what it's always been. There's no other band. You know what I mean? It's like growing up, you're like, cool, I'm gonna go to the punk show that also has a hippie jam band and like Christian worship group, and like, you know what I mean? It's just like the show we're going to, but again, everyone's so super hungry for music. It's like when the big acts do get there, and every year, around summer solstice when the sun doesn't set and stuff, that we'd always get at least one big act. A lot of times it's like new metal or whatever, like. It used to be popular, but still blows up in the small towns and the fair circuit and like things like that. Like, but when I was younger, we did get a couple good ones. I saw Metallica, Monster Magnet in the '90s, and I saw Pantera open up for who were they? White Zombie.
Wow. Like, you see the Scorpions?
Ozzy Osbourne came up there. Outkast, Snoop Dogg, I was like, I was able to see some cool shows. Some of the bigger acts will make it up there in the summertime, and it's always great. You know what I mean? And literally everyone will show up, and buy everything. So it's great. It's great for bands when they can make it up there. You just gotta like be able to get there. You know what I mean? And like when you're flying in and having to rent gear and all that stuff, it becomes a little bit of a harder thing to accomplish, so it doesn't happen as often. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't know, Alaska's getting more popular with the TV shows and the internet and all that stuff, so it's like, I feel like it more and more so people are starting to go up to Alaska and do little tours up there, and then because again, if you make it up there, you're going to make a killing. Everyone's going to buy like 3 copies of your shirts. You know what I mean? It's like people are so hungry for that stuff and for merch, and like people also don't realize that Alaska is not like the lower 48 in the fact that everything is super expensive to ship there. So people don't order off Amazon the way they do in the lower 48 and like all that other stuff. So it's like ordering merch and all that other stuff is just not as a common of a thing. So it's just really cool when bands can actually make it out there and do the damn thing.
Yeah. So when you were a little kid growing up there, I mean, what was the moment you got bit by the heavy bug, the aggressive music bud? I mean, down here we can kind of joke it's about like getting bit by a little bat, but you were probably bit by a wood tick or something.
I was like, there's only mosquitoes. It's definitely a heavy metal mosquito that got me. But those first loves are definitely the pretty common ones of the early 90s. I was born in 85, so I got into metal around 92 or 93. That's pretty young, 7 or 8 years old, but it's definitely like Metallica. That one was a big gateway drug for most people.
Definitely.
Sepultura, as a Native American, it was always awesome to see brown dudes in metal. You know what I mean? Just like,
sure.
Especially from like Brazil, you know what I mean? It was just Sepultura and Soulfly. Both of those bands were just like super cool to me when I was like really little. Fucking Cannibal Corpse, of course. Like Ace Ventura. Like most people turn that on. I mean, like Mortal Kombat soundtrack had Napalm Death and had the Zero Signal by Fear Factory on it. Like there's a bunch of like the soundtracks and like skateboard videos and stuff. Like Welcome to Hell had like Iron Maiden, it's like there is like a bunch of those ways of figuring it out. And I mean, it's like once it started, it just kept rolling and rolling. I also really liked punk. In Alaska, most of the metalheads were incredibly racist and just bad people. So it's like, you know, being a little fucking native fat boy didn't really like vibe with the metalheads so much. You know, there's a couple cool ones, but I definitely grew up with more of the punk rock community. You know, they were more kind of shared how I thought. You know, like, you know, I was very flamboyant and feminine kind of guy. So like, again, I was way into the idea of gay people having equal rights and all that shit. That
sure
was very.
You belong in the Pacific Northwest, brother.
That's the reason I came out here, you know. Plus, I get nature, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm a fucking Alaskan. Like, I need my nature time. So it's being so close to be able to go out to the woods and just like decompress out there in the mountains. You know, I like to snowboard in the winter and hike them in the summer. So it's really nice to just have that escape just for the mental, because I know a lot of cities like LA and stuff, it's pretty impossible to just escape.
Yeah. You mentioned Native a second ago. So you grew up in a Native family?
Yeah. So I'm half white, half Athabascan. My dad
Nice.
to Alaska and worked on the oil field and met my mom up there. And
Wow.
So I grew up with all my Native family. My white family was in Wisconsin, so like we didn't really know them. Once my grandparents died, they're, you know. Plus, they're all super religious, and they would always look at us really weird. And I mean, my dad was Catholic too, but you know, it's like when you have little native metalhead kids, you don't really want to take them around to your Christian white family or whatever.
Right. Hence, Satanic Royalty Records.
Yeah,
right.
You know,
right.
A big part of that is just like
pushback.
Like it's not even like pushback. That's why I kind of wanted to change the name, so it's just not like Satan. It's
Sure.
It is pushback or whatever. It's like I fucking hate religion. I hate it so much. It's like destroyed this world. It's basically killed off Native Americans. It's done like or brainwashed people. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just this horrible thing. And so, you know, obviously Midnight put out the album Satanic Royalty with the song, and that name always stuck with me. Like I use Satanic Royalty as my DJ name, so I invite on DJ nights and stuff. And that's kind of where it came from. I had a logo for it, and then when Deathcave first came out, I was just like, I'll just do a fake label, Satanic Royalty Records or whatever, and we'll just put out our tape or whatever. And then when our album came out, you know, I was just like, all right, well, the pandemic just hit. Everyone we were kind of talking to no longer wants to sign a newer band or whatever. So it's like, whatever, we'll just keep this going. I'm just going to just say Satanic Royalty again for this full length. We'll put it out, you know, find a label eventually. But then the pandemic hit, and so there's a bunch of radical bands, you know. I definitely want to get more death metal and black metal on my label, but like I started off with a lot of doom bands because we got these are all old friends of mine. Like I grew up playing along with these guys, and they're all just friends, you know what I mean? So it's like Eris, amazing band, been around forever. Sandrider.
Have you heard of the Cobra?
And those are my friends, but they already had a label and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
So even though John did help me out a lot with connecting me with people, when I was first doing this, I just basically peeled back everyone I knew's mind, you know, like, and tried to like learn, because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So I was like, the only way to learn things is by asking people who do.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like I just kind of reached out to a million, you know, it's like I've done this forever, and so it's like I know a lot of people. Like, I'm just going to reach out to everyone. I reach out to, you know, like a big help too was Aaron Turner from Siege and Hydra Head. He's Hydra Head, you know, went under, and then Siege is like this more smaller run label and stuff, like, you know, so it's really cool to be able to talk about things that didn't work, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really nice to know about everything that works and stuff, but, you know, you also really needed to talk about, you know, the things that don't work, things that have failed, you know, it's like the things that people don't really like to talk about, but it's really important to know when you're doing this shit, especially like, you know, me, I don't have an education, I don't have anything, like I never worked at a record label, you know what I mean? So it's like when I had to do this, I had a lot to learn. Yeah. So it was just mainly not being afraid to ask people, you know, to do it, which was really helpful. You know, I still have, you know, in the first year I made a few things where I needed to like adjust and fix, but that's just part about running a business, doing things. You know, I got to be okay with failing something and learning from it, and then growing and, you know, just growing from it. You know, it's just part of life. But for the most part, everything has been running really, really smooth with Satanik Royalty Records since we started about 13, 14 months ago.
Yeah. I've seen the name all over the man.
Sorry. I kind of got sidetracked. But so it was Arius, Sandrider, and Old Iron. All three of them during the pandemic hit me up.
That's right.
About a label.
Yeah.
And I was just like, fuck, man. With everything Deathcave was going through, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to like see if I can find investors. Blah blah blah. I have the time. Like, I have nothing else going on. I'm not good at sitting still. So. Like a lot of musicians, I have ADHD, you know, so it's just like, when they're like, all right, just stay at home and don't do anything, you know, it's just like, oh God, you know, it's like I'm stuck with my insane thoughts, like, I'm going to go crazy. So, you know, I played a lot of video games at first, but I could only do that for so much, you know, and then I was just like, all right, I'm going to figure this out, try to see if I could find investors, and I did, and here we are, you know, it's like music coming back, which is super killer. Like, you know, the records are finally coming out, you know, with the crazy turnaround times, you know, it was like a big start, but I had a lot to do and a lot of waiting to do afterwards. So it was like, it was a lot to do, but it was awesome, man. I've enjoyed every step of the way of running a label, man, and it's just being able to throw shows and do amazing things for the Seattle community. And the cool thing is too, it's like I do all the booking at a venue and stuff, and like I do a lot of shows around town, and I'm not able to like sign every single band, and I think people realize that, but I still like to help bands, and I still like to book them and help them get shows and give them names. You know, it's like this community here in Seattle is super duper important to me, and I've always loved it. And you know, it's like, again, even if I can't sign bands the records or whatever, because I can't afford to do them all, you know, I'll still distro people's records and like, you know, like still just try to help out when I can, just because, you know, this shit's bigger than me. You know, it's like, of course I'm trying to make it in this world, but I'm just also trying to like keep my scene I love and care about so much, like alive and thriving. You know, it's like this is the reason why I do this. You know what I mean? It's like I love it. I'm passionate about it, and I care about it. You know, it's like I'm crazy. I've had 20 panic attacks this year from being too much. You know, because I do all the booking,
overwhelmed,
record label. But it's like, it's okay. It's all worth it. You know what I mean? It's like I know eventually the shit will be worth all the work, you know what I mean? It's like, so I just gotta keep my head down and keep on grinding, you know? So I appreciate, you know, people like you being willing to talk to me and help spread the word.
Sure.
It means a lot. Sure.
Yeah, no, man, I greatly admire you, and I love people like you. I don't want to lump myself into you, but I mean, you're correct. We're all, I mean, any musician worth their salt seems to be ADHD, ADD, something, right? We always have to do work. We're always moving. We're standing up.
That's because normal ass people can't handle this shit, man. They got to be like on this shit constantly, working 20 things at once. It scares a lot of people. You know, if you're trying to do music like hard, it's a lot of fucking work, a lot of emails, a lot of the crazy shit that's more than just being able to write cool songs and playing live, you know? So it's just, sometimes it takes that craziness to be able to just make it.
You have to love it.
You know, yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, I love the fact of it too, because I mean, I've been saying this a lot for years now, but everybody in the world needs somebody to champion them. And you're championing all these doom and gloom bands. I mean, not just that, but you're getting behind these bands that may not have a voice if it wasn't for you. Yeah,
and again, it's been really cool to see. You know, it's like part of me opening this record label is I wanted to have distro in independent record stores like worldwide. So like being able to get these records into the fucking record stores where the punks and the metalheads go and shop at was like a big part of it. Like I don't think I could have done this. You know, it's like otherwise I would just be doing what the bands are already doing themselves. You know what I mean? It's like, but I wanted to be able to lift things a little higher. And especially bands like Old Iron, man. They've been around for a little over 10 years. One of the best doom bands out there, doom sludge bands out there. Like, their songs are phenomenal. And they're just like relatively unknown, you know? It like blows my mind, you know? It's like, so I'm just trying to do what I can to kind of help spread the word, spread the love on those bands. Like, and I've started with all these Seattle bands, but outside of that, I'm only going to be signing Native American bands, or I guess like bands of trans people, people who have less of a voice, less of a opening to like the regular world. Like, I just because it's mainly about Seattle, what I want to do with here in Seattle, but I'm definitely down to help my Native brothers and sisters out there, and my trans folks. You know what I mean? It's like, especially in the metal community, man. I fucking hate how much of that transphobia and stuff still exists. Like, it bums me out so much. It's like, I could go on and on about it, but it's there's no room for that. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a community, and this is for the love
people.
Of people. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, we're way beyond this gatekeepery bullshit. Like, I'm just, so sick of it. I've always been sick of it. You know what I mean? I always kind of hated that part of metal. But it's like, I love seeing everything that's been happening in the last decade, especially with kind of like everything being more open. Like bands like Thou or Full of Hell, which would constantly get shit for being like hipster bands, are now kind of like relatively welcome, and like people will still constantly talk shit about stuff, but I love that. I love those people that have been against the grain, that didn't do things the way that the older people said that they had to, like all this shit that's just, I don't know, it's just, I'm just happy to see metal moving progressing in a way that it should.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think the funny thing about the human nature is we always want somebody. So first of all, we always want to be right. Two, we always want somebody to dig what we dig, right? So it's funny how, like, in the metal community specifically, there's this all the multi genres, right, which we talked about a little while ago. But everybody's trying to convince you that their genre is the right one or the best one. And it's such a bizarre thing. And I love having this conversation because you and I are talking about the fact that it's the Rodney King thing. Why can't we just get along? Why can't we dig 50 different styles? Why do you have to be straight? Why do you have to be gay? Why do I have to have a title around it? Why can't we just be anything? And my daughter asks me all the time about progressive thinking bands, right? Queer bands, etc. And I said, honey, the main thing you've got to do, and you can help that community, is by let's not pinpoint on them being a girl band or a gay band or whatever, and let's just show that they're a killer band, right? That they're a great band that may happen to have trans people or gay people or whatever you want to call it in it. Because the bottom line is, dude, without getting religious, because I'm not a religious person either. I hate the term spiritual, but I have my faith.
Same here, man. I'm very spiritual myself. Right. I eat a lot of mushrooms and I listen to nature. And,
right. But I don't press my will on anybody else, because it sucks. I don't want you to impress your will on me. I'm not going to impress my will on you. It just sucks. I don't understand it. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is people are people, and let's just learn how to get along. And if you don't like it, fine, then step off. But don't talk shit about me the moment you step off. Just let it go. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I also love the idea of getting rid, to circle back a little bit about what you said, or getting rid of the idea of like female fronted or like all, you know what I mean? It's just like, dude, women have been slaying metal for a long time. Like, this is like not something that just like recently happened. Like it's no longer needs to be like good for a girl or like blah blah blah. It's just a good musician. Like, women have fucking came so far in the last several years, especially. I mean, they've been playing metal forever, you know what I mean? But it's just like, it was so gatekeepery and all this other shit for so long that it like makes sense why people were just like, fuck this, I'm done. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't blame them for doing that, but it's just like, we need to get rid of this same, like everyone's included. Everyone's good. Do they play music good? That's what we need to focus on. Not whether they play music good for being gay or being whatever else, it's like, do you play music good? That's all that matters, Do you rock out on stage? That also matters to me. You know what I mean? It's like,
or they say things.
Can you rock out while you're playing? Because
that's right. Or they'll say things like, you play like a girl. Like, I mean, quit saying you play like a girl or she plays like a girl. I mean, she's a girl. She just plays like she plays. This idea of like if you don't swing your wrists a certain way, you're not an effective drummer. It's like, are you kidding me? This isn't about technique. This is about passion.
Yep.
So, dude, we got to talk about the record because I know you and we can drift forever, right? I mean, that's
like I said, I like to talk. I can just talk.
So, the new EP, do you call it 2 or? I'm assuming.
Yeah, just 2. Yeah, just our first EP was just Deathcave.
Gotcha.
Our second EP is going to be 2.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I'm going to be surprised if our third EP will become 3.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about long songs, Birch Trees or Bones is a long song.
Yeah, I mean our first EP was 3 songs at like 23 minutes, and this one's like 21 minutes at 2 songs. So it's like, it's like that's like a punk band's full length. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, the EP was great, man. We've recorded with a different engineer each time. It's like something that we kind of wanted to do, just like. Again, we'll be changing our styles a little bit per album, maybe our gear a little bit per album, so everything's going to be slightly different, you know what I mean? And we just wanted to work, like our first EP we did with Tad Doyle.
I know Tad, yeah.
And that was great. Working with him was fantastic, sounded great. And then the second album we did with Ben Brellen, who is... he makes Berlin amplifiers. The band Helmsley, the band Constant Lovers, and he owns Barhouse that I manage. So he's a very close friend and dear friend of mine. So I was like, I wanted him to kind of come and do this. We actually did that album in Anacortes at an old church called The Unknown, which is a fun place, studio, to be able to get big sounds because of how big the room is. And that was a super fun experience. Never did a stay-in recording, like drive somewhere and just record an album. That's all you're doing. You know what I mean? Where it's just like you're not getting off and going to a bar or like going home. You're just in the mindset of recording an album, which is really cool. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And then with this next EP, we did Matt Bayless over at Litho Studios in Fremont. And holy shit, working with Matt was amazing. Like I kind of always wanted to do an album with him just because of his the albums that he put it out. I mean, like those albums are also amazing, So it's like usually when people record really good albums, there's a reason, they just build behind what they do, So especially when it comes to heavier music, which a lot of people don't like to record as much, you know what I mean? It's hard, it can be hard. And in the past, we've always had to kind of like dial our amps down and stuff while recording. But with this one, we left everything the way we play it live and just kind of like was able to get it. Like working with Matt was amazing. He was able to use these really old microphones instead of ribbon mics. So there's no like things getting blown out or cutting out. Everything was just captured with its sound, which is, what you kind of want to do when you record. And especially when you're using a lot of cool amps and stuff, like, I would be able to let them sing.
Yeah, you want that original tone, man.
100%, yeah. And so it was really quite an experience. We still might, with it depending on who we use for our next full length. Our idea was to use a different engineer almost every time, but
nice.
Might use Matt again. It was really quite an experience, and the way the album sounds and the way the recording came out. I also really like an engineer who will push you really hard. You know what I mean? It's like maybe not be your best friend while recording, but someone who could really get the best performance out of you. And I really, really enjoyed that about Matt. He was able to kind of like give you the pep talks and give you the things you need to hear for when you're trying to do something that's maybe a little harder. Not exactly being able to do this hard transitional riff without like, making some kind of weird off noise or whatever. Like, sorry, I realized I had a skin flap. I took off my Band-Aid from this hole I had. I had a skin flap there, so I had to just bite it off.
Well, I got to say this, man. I mean, the reason I even discovered you, I mean, I'd heard about you locally. I mean, I live in Snoqualmie, so I'm not that far away from you.
Mm-hmm.
But my buddy at Earsplit Earsplit Promotions, in New York, he's like, dude, have you heard this new Deathcave record? And I'm, you know what I mean? Blows me out of the water. And loves it. I don't know if you know Dave very well, but he loves
I mainly work with Liz, his wife, who's amazing.
She is awesome.
The label couldn't have done all the things that we're doing if I didn't have a team, and she's definitely a big part of that team.
She loves music.
It's just I want every single person on my team to actually be excited about what they're doing and about the things they're doing. You know what I mean? I don't want it to just be a job or just be this cool thing. You know what I mean? Which I'm sure you've seen being there in the music business forever. There's always the cool people that are just doing it for that reason. It's just so silly to me, but their passion for music, for what they do, it just comes out. And I mean, that's the only people I want to work with, like artists, everything. Like I only want people who are excited about what they're doing. You know what I mean? It's like this. I don't have time or room for people that are not actively like excited and working hard for what they do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. They're a hugely creative couple. I love them to death. They've been really good to me. Turned me on a lot of killer material. But I do want to address one thing on the record. I know I brought it up a second ago. That first track, "Birch Trees or Bones," and it has an accompanying video. And I'll be the first person to tell you, I never listen to lyrics, man. I don't ever listen to lyrics. I don't know what it is. I think it's because I'm a drummer and my brain just wants to hear the rhythms and the arrangements, and it wants to immerse itself in the tones. But what I love about this record is it seems to be saying, and I could be wrong, but it seems to be a diatribe against the way we treat our planet and others. And I don't know if it's if I'm even on the right path but I mean, it seems like an examination or a protest against the way things are.
Absolutely. I mean, almost every song we write, we use either nature, space, or whatever to kind of like tell these stories, which are just analogies of like real life problems, real life things that we deal with, but we just tell them in the, way that I like to write lyrics. Like in this band, I do primarily most of the lyrics, but I like to write it with the guys present, and that way I can bounce ideas off of them. That way, if I, like more than a thesaurus or a rhyming dictionary, sometimes I need a different way of thinking. You know what I mean? Just like, especially when you get stuck on like a lyrical pattern, like when you first come up with one. It's sometimes really hard to break that when you're like, I actually don't know if I really like that. So it's really nice to have someone else be like, oh, how would you sing that? You know what I mean? Just like, because you're able to get.
Oh, I lost you, dude. No audio.
Sorry, I do.
You went away again.
All right, sorry. I just received a phone call, so I was.
Gotcha. Go away. Okay, no worries. Yep. We're good.
So the lyrical content has basically, it's been about like, the death and the decay of a lot of things. And, a lot of that goes with just the reality and how life progresses and moves forward. Again, like most everything I write about is going to be an analogy of something bigger.
Yeah.
I don't ever usually like to just be straightforward with my lyrics at all.
Yeah.
I don't like being like, well, this says this and this, you know what I mean? It's like, how do you take it? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, and that's why, I like to use nature a lot in my subject matter when it comes, because you can relate almost all of life's problems to problems that happen naturally and the land and stuff,
Yeah, trees are the lungs of the earth, man.
Totally. So there's the story that goes behind how the song title "Birch Trees or Bones" came to be. So on 4/20 in 2021, I went to. It was right after me and my ex of a super long time split up. Amicably, we're still friends. It was just like one of those things that when the pandemic happened, we spent too much time together and kind of just grew apart. Just when we realized that maybe we weren't the perfect match for each other, or, it's just part of life. So I went to nature and I did, like maybe 3 or 4 hits of acid and about a half ounce of mushrooms.
Yeah.
And, just really needed to recalibrate my brain. Just go to nature and, fucking throw on some Black Sabbath around a fire and see what happens,
Yeah.
See where you go, you're able to find these dark places in your own subconscious that you didn't really know existed, but you couldn't feel, you know what I mean? It's like something's off. So I was able to go in this deep area, and, when I was definitely inside of fractal vision mode, I was looking across the river at all the birch trees, and I just kept repeating birch trees are bones, going on about how, there's a semblance of death on the land through life that's already there, the chaos, just reminders of all the death and everything that's happened. And so that kind of got stuck in my head, and the next day I kind of started writing the song, and funny enough, we released it for 2022, which was 1 year after the song was conceptualized. And
nice.
It was kind of cool. It worked out that way.
Nice.
And then because of how much Sabbath and everything we're listening to around that time, I really wanted to do a Sabbath cover. Something I've always wanted to do. I wanted to do one of the longer songs that is not as covered, there's between basically, I was either going to try to do Warning or The Writ, which are 2 of their longer end album songs. They're both the last song on an album, and both really important albums, their first and 5th album, I believe, or 6th album. Which Sabotage is one of my favorites, always has been. I mean, I also wanted to do maybe Am I Going Insane, but that's just one riff repeated the whole time, you know what I mean? It isn't too much to that, but it was just these are all ideas I had, and then once we started kind of talking to the band and figuring it out, we kind of decided on The Writ. I was really excited about that, though, especially because it's all the cool parts happen on the bass. It's that's definitely a Geezer Butler song, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so much to the point where it's he does a boo-doo-doo-doo, boo-doo-doo-doo that follows the lyrics. Now, this is something that most people don't do when they're writing songs, is writing parts that follow the lyrics.
Right.
Write the lyrics over the thing, but it's because Geezer Butler, if you didn't know, listener, Geezer Butler did 99% of Black Sabbath's lyrics. He was their lyricist. And also an amazing bass player. He just had such a cool way with words and everything, but just that's just such a Geezer song. And just that again, where it's where he does the boo doo doo doo. I had to pattern out that whole thing, and basically when I was recording, because I wanted it to be perfect to go with the lyrics or whatever, I had to sit there and just follow this pattern. It's 3 high, 1 low, 2 high, 2 low, 2 high, 3 low, 1 low, 1, you know what I mean? It's just there's no rhyme or rhythm behind it. There's no mathematical reason why it's doing that. And the only reason is because it's following the lyrics that are going, you know what I mean? It's just it's such a cool thing. I don't know. It's little things like that make me really happy.
Earlier you were talking about ADD, and you were talking about all the things you kind of want to do and how you stay active, and how you've got the record label, you've got so much going on. And I wonder, do you see that hyperactivity and that need to be busy as self-destructive? Because one of the core tenets of my show is talking to guys like yourself who have successes, and you're doing these different things, you're trying new ideas, you're giving us an example of your material. But a lot of times we're artists and we get in the way of ourselves. So I'm wondering, do you have a self-destructive habit or something that fucks everything up?
I held myself back for a long time. I've been a musician for 25 years, and for 18 of those years I was addicted to alcohol, and I do some hard drugs here and there, you know what I mean? Ways of escaping and stuff. I never stopped playing music or stopped doing my things, but I have very bad depression issues that go along with ADHD, and I used to be fat, super fat when I was younger, which also was one of the side effects of not being able to sit still. A lot of people pick up eating when they're young, you know what I mean? It happens. you know, which I also love. Like growing up as a fat kid, being made fun of all the time, kind of makes you into a pretty good person, I feel. As long as you don't let it turn you into a supervillain.
Yeah. Go to gun kids down at a school.
Yeah. You know, I was definitely had a really hard time at school. You know, I was like 400 pounds in high school before I started getting into martial arts and eating healthy and all that stuff. And kind of like started losing the weight and all that. But yeah, I mean, it was very. You'd hit that point where you just like want to like give up or like leave things. You know, they call it the fight or flight mentality with ADHD or whatever, and I definitely had it. You know. Probably why some of my bands broke up when they did, but there's good reasons for each of them. You know what I mean? There's a lot of self-destructive habits with some of those bands.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people that, you know, especially when you grow up a little bit more poor and like, you know, don't really have the support and all that stuff that some other people do, it can be really hard. You know, like, again, I relied heavily on alcohol for many years as a crutch, you know. This July will be 7 years sober for me. But it's like, you know, once you realize that, you know, I wouldn't be able to do all the things I've been doing the last 7 years if I didn't able to kind of like take control of my life a bit more, you know. It's you know, it's just.
How did you take control?
It's a bummer. It took me until I was like almost 30 to figure it out, but I'm happy I did it and I was able to kind of like keep up. And I definitely love helping people in the metal community, Native Americans, a lot of people who struggle with addiction, alcohol. Like I've always loved helping out friends, especially within the heavy music scene with that. You know, it's becoming more and more common as of these last few years. But for a while it was, you know, again, it was frowned upon a lot. You know, metal and drinking went hand in hand a lot of times, you know.
Yeah.
But the sad reality is that there's the sad parts that go along with a lot of that. You know what I mean? The stuff that you don't see.
Why do you think the alcoholism is such a thing in the Native American community? Do you think it's just the idea of being subjugated for so long by somebody somewhere?
Yeah, when there's no alcohol like around, so it's not really in the system the way it is with European people, you know what I mean? So it's like it wasn't in there long, and then you have every single thing it's taken away from you, and then alcohol's available. It's like quick, really easy remedy. Alcohol and drugs. Most indigenous places have a lot of problems with that because it's really easy to just escape your problems, you know, especially when it's a fight that you can't really win, you know. It's like it's just easier to just kind of like give up a little, you know what I mean? To just kind of like surrender to the good time or whatever. Like, you know, again, I'm guilty of it for a really long time. You know, it's really easy to want to just ignore things and just drink and do all those things. But it's a lot more it's a lot more rewarding when you kind of are able to put that back and instead try to be proactive when it comes to these kind of things, you know, instead of like drinking because of XYZ, start taking care of this and that to make X, Y, and Z start to, you know, come together, start to, you know, be taken advantage. You know, it's like no one's going to help us except for ourselves. So it's like really up to us to choose our path, you know. And it's like, again, it's really easy when it's just so easy to escape.
Yeah,
you know? Right. But it's, the hard path is definitely the
hard path. Yeah. So one of my favorite questions, I rarely ask this one, but I got to ask you because you're the right guy for it. So for me, the idea of death is interesting, right? It's a mystifying thing. None of us know what it's like. What's on the other side? Is anything on the other side? What does it feel like? You know, and you know, we have movies like Groundhog Day, right, where sort of comedically, you know, the guy kills himself like 9,000 different ways over the course of 33 years, you know, and it makes me think, you know, like curious about a guy like you who's so eccentric and so different. Like, is there a perfect way to go out? Like, how would you choose your own death?
Well, I've died a million times in my head already, so that's like kind of one of those things I question reality sometimes. Where I'm like, hey, did I just die, and am I just playing out what I wanted reality to do, whatever? All my friends, just parts of my own personality I made up, you know, like all these weirdo questions. But if I could go out, Man, I don't know. Just, I guess not in pain. I have a lot of stomach issues, so I kind of feel like I'm gonna go out suffering for many years. But if I could if I could just pass out in my sleep and just like drift into the unknown, that'd be great. But you know, life is a wild ride. You know, I probably should have died several times. You know, I've got many scars that shows I tried.
Wow.
But you know, it's just like, I just got to take it as it is. I try not to think about what is not important to think about. You know what I mean? It's like, but yeah, if I could go out like that, that'd be tight. I don't know. Maybe if I could like smoke a joint and listen to some like Sabbath or something, like, you know, like Changes or something.
Sure.
maybe that will like be the way I want to go out if I could choose one. Watching a sunset on the ocean or something, you know, like.
I like that idea.
But you know, I'm open to however it comes. You know, it's like it's not gonna
come.
It's not gonna hurt my feelings one way or the other. It's gonna come for me eventually.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I don't die in a death cave being burned alive. You know, the way that we got our name from the Apache Death Cave. That's how everyone died there between the Battle of Apache and Navajo. So. Yeah, if I don't die that way, being either burned or suffocated to death from the smoke, you know, I think I'll be all right.
Yeah.
Also, I got gastritis and all these problems with my stomach. I just know, though, it's probably going to be something like that. I'm just going to suffer in a hospital.
Yeah. Well, let's end this on a down note.